Welcome to the Cutting Onions podcast with Bobby Shaw. This episode is part 2 of the conversation with Damon Biggins. We ended the conversation with Damon last week as he was opening Paris for Chipotle. This week we pick up with Damon's return to the United States, how that transition looked for him, how he was able to find his passion again after leaving Chipotle, and the cosmic reset that helped him realize that everything he had learned, taught, and done still mattered. I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation. Here's Damon, and we'll see you on the other side.
All right, Damon, so I appreciate you coming back for part 2 of this conversation since we spent an hour and a half on the phone last week. But we got through your introduction section, so we know just about your background and kind of where you've been. So I want to kind of transition into the next phase of the conversation, but I want to start with kind of you giving us an update on where you are now. We know where you've been, but where are you now?
Okay.
And what are you doing?
So we ended our conversation last week with getting into Paris, opening the Chipotle in Paris, and did that for a few years, rotated back to the U.S. in early 2015 when the assignment was ended over there.
Right.
Got into Chipotle for another 6 months, and it was different than the beginning, and I was out of country for 7 years, so I went on the hunt to see kind of what's out there, how I could utilize my skill set that I learned over 7 years abroad, and transitioned to a company based out of Utah as a regional director, had 9 restaurants in the Colorado area, and did that for about 15 months. It was good in many ways. It stretched me. It was a challenging market with challenging people. A good brand at its heart, but something that really lacked there was my passion that I had with Chipotle.
Right.
I was looking for something
Right.
that I was able to really jump in, and I did, but it didn't reciprocate as much as I was hoping. So I did the job to the best of my ability, but there was something lacking, and a big part of that. My decision to leave that company was to come home. I'd been traveling like an incredible amount and wanted to get back into Austin. Say I missed my son's junior year of high school, and I didn't want to miss a senior year. So moved back through the network, got a job with Hot Dottie Burger Bar, where I'm at now, and got inside 4 walls, ran a restaurant again from the ground up, took over an existing one that was struggling, and put all my tools to use in terms of connecting with people, in terms of developing people, in terms of increasing guest satisfaction through great food and a great guest experience, and that tapped me into my current role, which is director of operations for new restaurant openings.
That's awesome.
And it's I was going into the 4 walls of one restaurant again. It was a cosmic reset for me. Kind of calmed me, allowed me to focus, allowed me to trust that the things that I was doing still work.
So let me ask you about that, because you mentioned earlier in the conversation, and then we talked about this a little bit off podcast, but you just said a couple seconds ago that you were trying to find your passion. You're trying to find something that you could connect to in the way that we connected to that at Chipotle. And I don't think that's uncommon, Damon, but no one's ever really articulated that. So you get to be the guinea pig of me asking this question.
Excellent.
So, because I struggle with that too. I mean, I've been gone from Chipotle for 7 years.
Yeah.
And coming out of Chipotle, I took some time off because I need to reconnect with my family. Mm-hmm. And I've been on the road quite a bit. And as I started to look at other opportunities, it just wasn't the same. Like, I just couldn't connect in the same way with the brand. And I've done other things, and I've worked with other organizations, and it's been really good. Mm-hmm. But nothing that's connected me the way that we did at Chipotle. So I guess for just a minute, if we go off script, like, what do you think that was? Like, what do you think that was then at that time? And I know that it's a completely different organization now. Yeah. I'm not sure we could go back now and we could connect in the same way. In fact, pretty sure there's a 100% chance that wouldn't happen. But what was it about when you left Chipotle and you were trying to figure out what was next? Like, what made it so difficult to connect with the passion that you had inside?
I think initially, so growing up in Chipotle domestically from 03 to 08, excuse me, the quirkiness of the culture, the dynamic of the culture, the speed at which we were growing and how much we were relying on each other to protect the brand.
That's right.
But I didn't think like that. I mean, you did, Gretchen did,
right?
Duffy did, Monty, everybody felt that way.
Right.
And yeah, we happen to be open 100 plus restaurants a year to 200 restaurants a year.
Yeah.
And we're able to maintain that for a long time.
Long time.
But little quirks like the memos that would come out, MEH, MOH, memo. I mean, just little quirky things like that kept it, fun and young and vibrant. And
it's almost like we didn't take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah. And that mentality. So when I joined Chipotle, we had 200 restaurants.
Yeah.
When I left, we had 2,200 restaurants.
Right.
And 7 years that I was out of country, I'd come back for leadership conferences and so forth, and I was touching into the U.S. culture a bit, but not really deep diving as I grew up in. So when I came back 7 years later, the culture was very different. It was becoming an audit culture.
Right.
Right. Our folks in place at peak hour, and
that's right.
Video monitoring that, and I just thought that was super weird. Like, why don't you put boots on the ground and come in and shoulder to shoulder like we used to do? But that, I think folks were stretched so thin. You had field leaders that had 20 plus restaurants that just couldn't be in a restaurant every day. And that, for better or worse, I mean, that just changed.
That's right. That's right.
And so I think that was my first kind of understanding that this is a different place.
Yep.
And even though I was within the organization that I once had it,
right,
it was no longer there.
And you went internationally, and you created that and took it with you,
so
right?
It was super fresh. It was super fresh in my mind.
Right.
And thank you. Because that's, you're right. That's exactly what I had created and strived to create over there.
So from your perspective, it was like, well, why wouldn't we still be doing this, right?
Came right back in
for 7 years. That's very interesting. That's very insightful.
So I gave it 6 months. And actually, I knew pretty quickly, but I still gave it 6 months to kind of let it play out.
Sure.
But my leaders at the time, one of them said, quite frankly, Damon, I don't know how to lead you with your experience and where you come from and your perspective. And I was like, that's a really troubling statement. Because, I mean, I still want to grow. I'm still, ambitious and hungry. And this is still a growth company, so it's funny that
you would say that.
With that statement. Right. So I went out and I searched, and but you're right. I didn't find what I was looking for at the first move.
Yeah.
But I was 12 years with Chipotle.
Yeah.
And then when I went, I think I was looking for an immediate kind of surrogate.
Right.
And it wasn't there.
I'm so glad you shared that because I have the exact same experience, and I would bet you that a number of people listening to this that have spent time at Chipotle, any length of time at all, in the early days, right? Because like you, when I started, right, less than 200 restaurants, like 186. I remember having friends telling me, like, why are you going there? And I would look at them and say, why are you staying where you are, Like, because it was so different. It was really groundbreaking and really spoke to my soul.
Yeah.
And so coming out of that experience and looking for it, I'm like, this isn't there. And then I realized there was a moment, and I think this was a moment you had when you went to Hop Dottie, where you realized, wait a minute, I can create this. I just need to have the support with which to create it. Right? Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. So that's great. So you're now at Hop Dottie. You've been there for how long?
3 years almost.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. They're a great company. They're a great organization. So as you think back over your career, kind of now transitioning into the meat of the podcast after an hour of getting to know you, which was awesome. So at what point in your career was it that you realized you wanted to be a leader? Like, when did that happen for you?
I was manager in training at McDonald's in Salt Lake City, Utah. Former colleague, mentor, just who was a Ray Kroc Award winner.
Wow.
So, real high caliber.
Very nice.
McDonald's operator. And a great people person. And I was able to see how he was able to run great operations. Now, going back, I grew up with McDonald's, with my dad working there for 30 years.
Right.
To see somebody inside the four walls executing at that level was inspirational. And that's when I thought, hey, I would like to do that.
Right.
Now, how do I do that?
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's what I like to do. And my folks, being great parents as they are,
of course,
like, David, you're a natural leader. But I never really had a chance to put that to use or in a position to try it.
So you seen it firsthand inside of that restaurant. That's what it was for you. That was the spark for you.
I had, somebody I could look up to.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Not unlike when we talk about now mentoring leaders in our, in our restaurants, in our companies, organizations, right? That's what it takes, is for them to be able to look to someone who's had more experience, has maybe been somewhere that they haven't been, and so it's an opportunity for them to be able to latch onto that. That's pretty...
Yeah, which can put some folks on a pedestal. They may not know that.
That's true. That's true.
But
That's
you
true.
Want to, so, and I think that's my maturity over the years, is I can look at somebody and their actions and their behaviors and their results and the connection they have with people.
Right.
And like, ooh, there's some gems in there.
Yeah.
I want to learn more about that person. How are they doing? Why are they doing it? Is it staged? Is it natural? Which I'm a pretty good read of. I can see that from a mile away usually. And just...
Yeah, that's funny. Like, from my perspective, when I look at my career, there are like 4 or 5 people that I look back over the last 35 years, from my time as an hourly employee at McDonald's to where I am now. And I look back, and there are like 4 or 5 of those people like you described, right? That they were what I needed at that point in my career, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So as a young leader, that was my owner-operator, at McDonald's, who really, he invested in me. He saw a lot in me. He saw something in me I didn't see in myself, for sure, right? But then as my career unfolded, right? So there was like key people, like for instance, for me at Chipotle, it would be Matt Shyman. Mm-hmm. Matt was just one of those guys. It used to crack me up. Like when I first started working for Matt, like Matt had this reputation. He was hard. He was really difficult. He was, just always always on top of you.
Expressionless.
And so people would ask me, they would literally walk up and go, "So how's it like working for Matt?" I'm like, "It's awesome. Why?" And they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Do you know Matt?" And they're like, "No, not really. We just see him at conferences or meetings and stuff, and he just seems like he's really hard to get to know." I'm like, "Matt is awesome." I'm like, at that point in my career at Chipotle, like, if it wasn't for Matt, like, he's the one who ultimately at the front end of everything helped me be able to take on some additional opportunities that I wouldn't have gotten any other way from him. And he showed me really how to think as a multi-unit leader with a lot of geography and a lot of territory and a lot of responsibility. I mean, so he's, as I think back in my career, if I had to pick one person out of the mix for me, it'd be that guy.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, he was always, Matt is the king of asking the question, right? Like, he will never tell you what to do.
Yeah. Guide you.
He will always ask you the question to get you there. Like, I remember one time, this is embarrassing even sharing this, so I'm going to share it with you and whoever's listening to this. But I remember one time driving home from a restaurant in Nebraska, so frustrated. And, I just could not get the cogs under control. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna lock the walk in. I'm just gonna lock it up. I'm gonna put a lock on it. I want to make sure that every time someone needs to get in the walk-in, someone's going to come and get a key. And there was a long pause. And he said, you can do that if you want to, but, here's something you might want to think about. And he didn't, tell me not to do it, but I called him, 3 days later with a real plan and said, here's how we're really going to fix it, on-the-ground training, boots on the ground, kind of what you were saying earlier, right? And all he said to me was, it was a 2-line text that said, "Good call." And I was just like, so. But, I think all leaders need to have those people that they look back to and go, okay, this really inspired me to want to do more. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's awesome. So as you think about that now, and, you think about your career, if there's one piece of leadership advice that you could share with anyone who might be listening to this, what would it be? What's the thing that you hang on to? What's the thing that you find yourself going back to more often than anything else in your career from a leadership standpoint?
I'm going to borrow a phrase from Ray Kroc. None of us is as good as all of us. And I think
Ain't
about
that. The truth?
Wow. Think about that because I'm ambitious. Because I strive for greatness both personally and within an organization, to do the right thing for the people, to be recognized and rewarded. And
sure.
Sometimes I get I think.